We'll have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot! Artest looking, gets it to Bryant. Bryant, Jordan, has to put it up for the buzzer. Banks it! Oh! He banks it!
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scotty Talks NBA. As you guys know, Scotty Talks NBA is presented by DSM Media. You can find us on Twitter at DSM_media. Today, I am accompanied by a very special guest, and please let me not butcher his last name. I do have the infamous Zach. I butchered the first name. Zach Ciavolella.
There you go. There you go, man.
And you guys may know him from Philadelphia Sports Network, who he is the managing editor of. You guys also may know him from a Royal Pain. That is a Fansided Sacramento Kings account, as well as Site, which he is the site expert. Mm-hmm. And, of course, he is the host of the Baseline Scoop, which is also presented by Philadelphia Sports Network. Zach, welcome to Scotty Talks NBA. I'm so happy to have you, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Scotty. I'm excited to be here, to finally be doing something together, because we've known each other through Twitter for a little bit, and, and we're finally making it happen. So,
I'm definitely happy to have you, Zach. And, you mentioned Twitter, which I'm super active on. You're super active on. Follow this guy on Twitter. I mean, he's always putting out, whether it's a trade proposal. I mean, you did how many days in a row did you do the trade proposal?
I think I made it 32 days before I lost my mind.
Days, over a month. I'm still
trying to recover from it, basically, once the December 15th talks started happening, I was like, man, I'm not doing this till mid-December. I can't. I'm running out of trades. I'm running out of teams. I can't do this.
Talk about consistency, though. 32 days, over a month of Ben Simmons mock trades. And I know I truly appreciated it. So I'm sure many others out there would as well. Make sure you're following Zach at Zach Ciavo NBA on Twitter. Now that we got the introductions out, I forgot myself. If you're not already following me, you can find me on Twitter as well, at Scotty Drowned. Now that we got all of that out of the way, Zach, we're going to get into a lot of different things today. As I mentioned, you do cover the Kings. You also covered the Sixers. We're going to dig into both of those teams today, and it'll kind of mesh together in a sense with number 25. And then we'll finish out with just a few teams that have impressed you this season so far, and then your top 5 teams as of right now in the NBA. So let's start. Let's start with the Philadelphia 76ers.
Sure.
4-game losing streak.
Yeah.
Very simple question for you, Zach. Is it panic time yet, or should we relax?
Everyone's got to relax. I mean, here's the thing. Joel Embiid's not here. It'd be a different story if Joel was here. Tobias Harris is coming off of COVID. Seth Curry had COVID last year, and he looked amazing before he got his positive test.
Yeah.
When he came back, a lot of us remember he did not look the same for quite a while. Okay. So, unfortunately, it's not an easy disease. It takes some time to build back, whether it's the muscle memory or just getting back to 100% basketball shape, ability. So it's going to take guys like Tobias, Isaiah Joe, maybe a little less so, but Matisse Thybulle. It's going to take him a little bit of time before. Yeah. And don't forget, of course, like I mentioned, Joel Embiid. Yeah. He's probably going to need, just speaking frankly, the most time for that reason of anyone who went out for COVID. Yeah. Okay. Just because of his history, his body. It's going to take him a while before he's looking exactly like himself. So relax. Okay. One thing I really wanted to bring up, I saw this yesterday Austin Krell of the Painted Lines put this out there. He does great work. He threw out that the combination of Maxey Curry, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid lead the league in plus minus per 100 possessions. Of every lineup, okay, that's played at least 120 minutes together, so at least a moderate amount of time. Yeah. They lead the league in plus minus per 100 possessions. So once this team is healthy, okay, which they will be healthy again, we have ourselves one of the top teams in the NBA. So relax.
Yeah, and you mentioned it as far as the numbers of plus minus with that starting unit, best in the NBA. I mean, that speaks for itself, right? And I think some people are getting caught up in the Ben Simmons thing, which obviously when you lose an all-star player, it does affect your team. Like, yes, I think we can all agree on that.
All NBA.
Yeah, an all NBA player, all NBA defensive player, runner-up for defensive player of the year. That type of guy does affect, the play of your team. But, as far as what we're looking at as a team perspective, they basically traded spots. So they were the best defensive team in the NBA last year. Now they're the best offensive team in the NBA, which is still a pretty decent defensive team as well. But I guess, regarding this 4-game losing streak, and the conundrum of it all is that they were on a 6-game winning streak coming into it. So it's a 10-game stretch where they're just 6-4. I think what's scary is that they go on this, I believe it's a 6-game road trip. And it's against some pretty quality teams over in the Western Conference. What I want to ask you before I move to that road trip, which loss of the 4 is the most concerning for you?
It's a great question.
If any of them are concerning at all, which one would it be?
They're frustrating. I don't know how concerning I would say that they are. It's concerning that they didn't win a single one of those games. Individually, if I'm picking one, I mean, I don't know. They were in every single one of those games. So to a degree, dealer's choice. I mean, the Bucks game, was watching that game was extremely frustrating because we're taking it to a mostly healthy Bucks team while, we're missing Embiid and Tobias Harris. I mean, just absolutely unreal. It felt like. I mean, it felt like a playoff game, and we were missing our best players. So, I really think that game in particular was, like I said, disappointing. I wouldn't worry too much about any of these games. The one that I would say is the biggest problem, that Toronto Raptors game was that's
the one my mind goes to.
So attainable, and I had a brief interaction on Twitter with Danny Palmels after the game, where we were just we were joking around about, moral victories because it was the Sixers' third moral victory in a row, and it's how long are we going to keep celebrating those for, especially when these are winnable games? That's it. They're winnable games. And, the Pacers game, we certainly had a chance in. But for me, it's that Toronto game just because that was ours. That was our game. And they couldn't follow through again. So.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting question because I just wanted to see if your mind gravitated to the same game that mine did. Which it did. Toronto, I guess concerning may not be the right word. Frustrating is a better word for that sense. Yeah. But the Toronto game, Siakam's out. It's a tight game, like really, really tight until the end. Yeah. And, it just comes down to a few missed shots this way and a few made shots this way. And I think that's why it was frustrating for me. It was Tobias' first game back. I'm looking at the Knicks game. I thought the Knicks game was going to be tough. The Knicks play really hard defense. You don't have Joel Embiid. And it was, I believe, the first game they were without Joel Embiid, too. So that's a whole adjustment period.
Exactly.
And then, you move to the Bucks. It's like the Bucks have Giannis. They have Drew Holiday. They're missing Chris Middleton, sure. But come on. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, you're talking about a 2-time MVP and one of the best defensive players in the league who is not, we're not talking about a Tony Allen defender. We're talking about a guy who can, for the most part, do it all in Drew Holiday. So those are some high quality. It's a high quality 1-2 punch that you're still going up against.
So we got a couple comments coming in here. So I will start down here. So good evening, Scotty. Good evening, Adam. Thanks for tapping in.
Love Adam.
Jeremy, what's up, my man? Happy to see you tapping in. Chile, that's how all those games felt.
Yeah.
Make some shots. Some calls go our way. Yeah, it was very
deflating. That was big. Yeah, especially the Bucks game. That was a big storyline in the Bucks game.
That's something we could talk about. I do just want to ask you this one question that I had here in the comments, but that's something to talk about. Did Doc Rivers do this team a disservice by not running some of the G League guys? I'm guessing he means earlier in that stretch, and in turn gassing some of the older players. I guess such as Niang, Seth Curry, those type of guys, Danny Green. How do you feel about that? Do you think that maybe Jaden Springer, some of those guys should have got a little bit of run there?
You know, it's difficult because you have them available, and you know you're thinking about bodies, and you can even make the case that Paul Reed and Charles Bassey deserved more minutes, especially with how they played against the Bucks. They were, the two of them in particular looked good in the time, at least defensively, against the Milwaukee Bucks. So you can certainly make the case. So the difficulty is that it's very easy for Doc Rivers to talk himself into his own idea. So once he saw that the team was competitive and that this game was truly winnable, it became more about the moment and less about the long term for him. And that's what leads him to playing with these short lineups. It was at least, I want to say it was 3 games in a row at least where Maxey was playing 40 minutes a game. 40 minutes, just like these were bringing back memories of like Tom Thibodeau with the Chicago Bulls, just crazy stuff. And I'm just praying that there's no D Rose for Tyrese Maxey situation, and because that's a factor. If you overplay these guys, that can easily lead to injury. I understand he's not suffering like Joel Embiid has from issues before, but you can create those problems just like that. Yeah. So,
and he hits it. Maxey specifically hits the ground hard a lot. So
he does. He's a physical player. That's what he does. He is athletically gifted. That is the primary aspect of his game. I love to see, just to kind of go on this tangent for a little bit, how he's expanding his range and getting a little more into the step back game and everything such as that. Because, if you watch Maxey, how he initially came into the league and what he was good at, what he went to again and again and again, it profiled him as the type of point guard that once you hit a certain point, or if you have one bad injury, you are slowing down hard. We're talking about, obviously he's not the same, and I would say not even really comparable to Russell Westbrook because they're two different types of players. But, once you hit that 30 plus age range, you clearly become less effective. John Wall, obviously that was a combination of age and injury, so it's about adjusting, because you watch guys like Steph Curry and Damian Lillard, who obviously Lillard is having a little bit of a problem to start the year. A lot of players are, but when you have that range, it just extends your career so much. Not only does it take you to higher heights right away, but it helps you stay above there, helps keep your prime open longer. So all that just to say that I want Doc Rivers to play a few more guys, to even out that workload. Yeah. And because the thing is too, he's worried about winning that one game is why he goes with a short roster. But that's how we get Danny Green, messing up his hamstring yet again, because he's already doing too much. Danny Green, he needs to sit in the corner. He needs to sit in the corner and shoot threes and then play solid team defense. Okay. I don't need him on the Trae Youngs. I don't need him, running point in the half court offense. And if we keep it that way, he's going to stay healthy and he's going to be effective. So it's all about, it's a balancing act constantly.
It's that's so what funny. It's so funny you mentioned Danny Green as that specific example, because that's what my mind immediately thought of. Because you look back at that game, what was it, Saturday evening against the Pacers? He was kind of playing out of his mind. He was kind of playing.
He had a great game on paper. Yeah.
Yeah, on paper, right? He's getting in the lane, hitting layups. Mm-hmm. I never see Danny Green get layups or dunks or anything like that. And slowly but surely, boom, re-aggravates. It has to go sit out, right? Like, so, yeah, that's not what you want to see. But I can also see how Doc would fall into that type of thinking, just because going into that Knicks-Bucks back-to-back, my thinking was, let's grab this game against the Knicks. Hopefully we can steal one against them. Then tomorrow against the Bucks, if things kind of get out of hand, whatever happens, then you run those young guys. You let them go. You kind of wave the white flag. And if you can be competitive, you can be competitive. But it's like once you get into that habit, then it turns into that every single night because now, whoa, we got a chance. We can beat the Bucks. Let me turn it up for the rest of this game. Whoa, now we got a chance against the Raptors. Let me play Tobias over 25, 30 minutes after coming off COVID, right? Like, so it's things like that.
It's understandable. Like you said, it's a sign of being competitive, and in Philly, we love that. And you have to be competitive. Nothing is given; everything is earned. At the same time, you have to be smart. It's a long season, so I don't hate Doc for what he did. Obviously, like there's so much of it that is understandable.
Yeah,
but we have to be thinking, especially when you are led by Joel Embiid. In all aspects, you have to be thinking about the long term too. It's an 82-game regular season. Most of those games don't matter. Flat out, they don't. I mean, I was irate that Joel Embiid was playing so often and so many minutes at a time to start the season because clearly, or I should say, in my opinion, he was hurting all year, and it seems as though he should have actually gotten surgery during the offseason, didn't. Re-aggravated his injury really early on and has been struggling since. And instead of sitting him, which they should have, because we don't need him now. We need him come the spring. Okay. And so that's really like I said, the balancing act. It's difficult. I don't want to bash Doc too hard because again, I get it. Competitive. Love it. Okay. It's Philly. I get that. Please be smart with these players and don't do something now that keeps them out when we need them.
How much of that, as far as, the relationship between Embiid, the team, how much of that him playing, because, there was I can't remember which specific game it was, but apparently afterwards he couldn't literally walk the next 2 days. Like his knee was that sore. Like, I totally agree with you 100%. I'm just wondering, like, in that relationship, is Joel Embiid, like, if he goes in there and he says, no, I want to play, I want to lead this team, you know what I mean? Does he have
1,000% a big part of the problem?
Yeah.
It is. There's absolutely a lot of cases of Joel Embiid being so vocal saying that I don't want to go out. I don't want these injuries to keep me out of games and that to become a narrative. However, at the same time, he's trying to have his cake and eat it too, where if he performs badly, he becomes the martyr. And I love Joel Embiid, all right? But I got to call it like it is.
I know it's coming.
He's trying to be the martyr. He's trying to say, I'm trying to do everything I can, more so, but I got this knee, I got this back, I got this, that, the other thing, okay? Joel, be healthy, okay? Take time off. It's okay. You got another guy who's taking a lot of time off right now, okay? You can take a little time off, okay? Get healthy because, again, what's most important is having you when it matters, not now.
Yeah, and that was kind of my biggest thing coming in, and this is what we'll kind of tap into before we move on to we'll talk a little bit about Ben Simmons before we move on to the Kings. But coming into this season, if Ben Simmons, I wasn't counting on Ben Simmons playing for the Sixers. I sort of figured, especially after Daryl Morey's more recent radio appearances.
Yeah.
Talking about 4 years. So, coming into this season, I tried to temper my expectations too. Maybe they do slip to a 4 or 5 seed in the East. And, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, if that means that, you have a Joel Embiid-led team without Ben Simmons, without somebody to replace Ben Simmons, you got to keep him healthy at the end of the day. I'm sorry, my girlfriend must be burning something in the house. But, with Joel Embiid, getting him to the playoffs is more important than the seeding we saw that last year, right? We saw that last year.
Yeah.
So as far as your expectations for this team, where in your mind did you have them before the season, and maybe even compared to now, if it's changed at all? And then it's a double-ended question. So Tyrese Maxey, what does he do for this team in your mind as far as when it gets down to those crunch moments where we've seen Ben Simmons kind of crumble there, not be able to be effective offensively? How does this team look different when it does come playoff time? But first start with just your expectations for the Sixers in general.
Yeah, in general, before the season, I was in the same camp. I didn't expect Simmons to, be playing for the Sixers this year. I half expected him to be gone already. Personally, I was hoping that we would have Malcolm Brogdon helping to run point here in Philadelphia, but that's not meant to be. At least it can't happen for quite a while now that he signed that extension. I placed them about the 4th, 5th seed, depending, in the East beforehand. Now, things have changed. Things have changed a lot. Looking at how good this team is at their best, the seeding is going to be tough just because, with all of these issues with the COVID protocol, you might still be looking at, I'd say seeding wise, maybe a 3-4. But personally, I believe this is clearly the second best team in the Eastern Conference at the minimum. The minimum.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And, it's like I mentioned earlier, the 6-game win streak into the 4-game losing streak. I mean, I came into the season with the exact same expectations. Anywhere from, I think I said peak, prime 3 seed.
Yeah.
Bottom, 5 seed, maybe 6. I don't see the 6 seed really. I don't think that there's 5 teams better than the Sixers, even in the regular season, going through injuries, whatever the case may be. But then as they play together, you start seeing these guys, Korkmaz contribute, Niang's effect, Drummond obviously being the backup center.
3 of the best contracts in the NBA.
Yeah. And that's when you start saying like, oh, and they could trade Ben Simmons for more help, right? So like when you start thinking of it that way is when I start talking to myself into, 3, 2 seed possibly. Obviously the Nets are a really good team,
And then come playoff time, it's going to be interesting because you were talking about Tyrese Maxey. You asked me about him.
Yes.
Crunch time. And it's curious to think about, Maxey. The only thing that gives me pause is you see him now in crunch time. And he's great throughout the game. And there's even some games where he's finishing great. But some of these recent losses, you can see just how tired he is. And it's understandable. I mean, he's playing so many more minutes than he did last year. And he's playing, more minutes than many other NBA players. And he's asked to do a ton in each of those games. So it's slightly concerning to see him be so tired at the end of games and be so passive. My hope is that he's able to use these games to really get into that late game shape, with the more appearances that he has where he's playing 35 plus minutes, he gets used to it. He gets accustomed to it. He adapts to it. And so he then hopefully by spring will have that energy, assuming that he doesn't do it too often and tips the scale the other way. And he can be himself during those closing minutes, because if Tyrese Maxey is himself, far and away, that is a better offensive playoff player than Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
Far and away. I mean, he could contribute, that's this year's Tyrese Maxey replacing Ben Simmons. That gives us a series against Atlanta. That potentially gives us a series against Toronto with the quadruple bounce. Yeah. There's just such a difference that's made by him. And I understand he's not averaging, as many points as a Steph Curry. And I'm not saying he's on that level either, but just from where we've been from an offensive standpoint, his points per game may not be that different than peak Simmons, but the way he's going about it is just so helpful to the team, and it can't be overstated.
Yeah, no, and I thought you worded that beautifully. And you even mentioned Maxey's struggles late game, which I agree. It's kind of a great way to kind of baseline that, that hype for Maxey. He does have areas where he needs to continue to grow. I do think at the end of the day, when you're talking about a playoff matchup and you have a guy like Ben Simmons who I know that this previous year's playoffs was like not Ben Simmons, right? Like he's had meltdowns.
That's not him at all.
That was a meltdown to another level. As far as like the free throw percentage and the fact that it became a hack of Ben, that alone wins that Atlanta series. Not having to go through that.
Oh, we went at 5. Yeah.
It's a learning experience for Maxey, and it's good that he gets this in right now. He can get his weight or his feet under him, I should say. But yeah, I'm excited for the Sixers. I'm excited for the new look, and hopefully they can get something for Ben Simmons. And I guess it's a good time to actually bring up number 25, Ben Simmons, and actually talk about him tonight. Which I've been a little reluctant to criticize him, with the issues that he's dealing with mentally. I understand that, and I've been there, and I've heard, some of the stories with his family and some of the things he has going on in his life. Totally understandable. It would be understandable if he's even having issues with anxiety after that playoff appearance. Like, I'm not even – people joked about it, but that's not a joke. Like, when you – fall flat on your face on that big of a stage, like, let alone what the Philly fans feel like, his own well-being, his own self-dignity, his pride, that goes down a level. And it becomes this thing where you're at the free throw line. He can shoot free throws. We've seen him do it. It's a mental thing, and it's always been a mental thing on offense. And, I tried to stay away from criticizing him, but it keeps coming back up. The rumors surface, and you have Rich Paul say some sideways stuff. And
I think that's the thing for me with Ben Simmons. It's the most frustrating parts about Ben Simmons for me as a Sixers fan personally are that we're still talking about it and that nothing's been resolved.
Yeah.
And Rich Paul. Those are the two biggest things. You take those two things out of the situation, and obviously the whole situation has to change, but even still, it's just much easier to move on at that point. I mean, like yourself, I understand to a degree what's going on with Ben and don't want to critique him for struggling mentally. I mean, flat honest, I've diagnosed generalized anxiety disorder. I've missed work because of it as well. I get that. I get that part of it. I get that crippling feeling. In my mind, there's a lot of people saying, does he, is he really struggling with mental issues? Is he not? That's not up to us. That is not our place. That is not our decision. Okay. We should always be in the camp of wanting everyone to be mentally healthy.
Yes.
And so with Ben Simmons, the problem that remains, I can separate that. I can separate Simmons' decision-making to a degree, the fact that he's not playing. I can separate, what I normally would have anger for that. But what I can't get over, the biggest thing for me is Rich Paul.
Yeah.
Who I think has proved himself to be one of the worst agents in the NBA during this entire – and here's the thing. Rich Paul has created an absolute empire on the coattails of LeBron James. Let us not forget that is how this started, and that is why he's where he is today. I'm not saying he doesn't grind. I'm not saying he doesn't work, okay? I'm sure he does. Otherwise, this never would have been done to this degree. Clearly, he does not know the ins and outs of what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay? He has a lot of resources, and I think that's part of how he's successfully handled situations in the past, which is how a lot of successful people operate. That is not just Rich Paul, okay? But he does not handle the day-to-day for any of his clients, okay? Even LeBron James, LeBron gets what LeBron wants, okay? To try and get something for LeBron James, it's one of the easiest jobs in the world, okay? That's not that hard, all right? LeBron wanted to go to Miami to form a super team with his friends. He did it. He wanted to go back to Cleveland to show he could win there. He did it. He wanted to go to LA to, play for the storied Lakers and to become Mr. Hollywood, and he did it, okay? That was not thanks to Rich Paul. That was LeBron James, all right? Yeah. And all the other Clutch Sports clients, for everyone from LeBron down to Tyrese Maxey, if they really need something that some actual work needs to be done, it's not Rich Paul doing it. That's right. How it is with most agencies. It's not that top guy doing it. Okay?
Right.
So for me, Rich Paul is unceasingly aggravating. And that's the biggest reason I want to move on from Ben Simmons. And then to the second part of what I was saying, just stop talking about it thereafter. Once Simmons is gone, I won't care. I'm not going to boo him when he comes back. I don't care. I'm just going to enjoy who we have now, okay? Be it the players we already have, Embiid, Maxey, and whoever we will have, whether it's CJ McCollum. I highly doubt we're getting Bradley Beal, folks, just to be honest.
Yeah.
Or maybe Jaylen Brown.
Jaylen Brown's interesting.
I'm future focused. That's where I'm at right now.
I like
Get him
it.
to anywhere. I don't care anywhere. I hear he wants to. Obviously everyone heard he wants to go to California. That's fine. Just get him out of Philadelphia for his sake and for my sake. That's all I'm asking.
No, that's a good way to put it, Zach. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I was very bitter over the summer because I felt like, and I think it's something with Sixers fans in general where you had this Ben Simmons idea made up in your head, right? Like Magic Johnson, like the next LeBron, like
because he could be the next LeBron. That's the thing.
He has all the potential in the world, and so we built this image up in our head, or this idea that we think he should live up to. Yeah. And so then now we're just bitter because we spent so much time. Whether it's similar to the Wentz thing, because I was like a Wentz defender. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I look back on it, I'm like, man, I really defended him. At the end of the day, he was just like he was a decent quarterback, like a good quarterback. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not a bad player. I was just defending him as if he was like this elite, superstar. And it never has to be like that. And I think the same thing was done for Ben Simmons. You have, half the fan base had already turned on him. You had the other half, kind of just trying to defend him and stand, you could call it. But then, I got to this summer and I'm like, well, no, Ben Simmons, you don't get to turn your back on the Sixers in Philadelphia. Yeah. We get to turn our backs on you first. Like, and I think that's where, kind of just this like bitter and just petty, just a little bit of pettiness to it. I've been able to separate myself from that now that we've gotten basketball back. And now it's just like, if he's dealing with mental stuff, if it's better for him to get out of Philadelphia, understandable. Just get it over with. I want it done just as much as the next guy. And, as far as if he comes back to Philly, throwing stuff at him, booing him in the stand.
No, listen. All right. Throwing stuff at another person is not okay.
Never.
Right?
Yeah, that's never okay.
But all right. Throwing popcorn. I heard somebody try to make the argument, that, so you say throwing something's never okay. Well, what about a hat trick? And throwing hats on my that's not the same. That is not the same thing. Okay, throwing flowers at Sirianni because you're pissed off after a loss. Yeah. That's not okay. Popcorn at Russell Westbrook. That is not okay. Nope. Flat out. There's not an excuse for it. Grow up.
And that's I think it's good that you said that on here, Zach, because going into that moment, I think it's something that really needs to be emphasized when he finally does get traded, when he finally does come back to the Wells Fargo Center. Yeah. That needs to be a very controlled environment because I don't embarrass the fan base, right? Like that's my biggest thing. Don't embarrass the fan base by doing something stupid. This guy has not done anything personally to Philadelphia as far as, disrespecting the city, right? Yes, he wants out of Philadelphia. A lot of players can't deal with the fans or the media in Philadelphia. But, there's no place for it. And I think that's good that you said that. And that's something that needs to be revisited when that time comes.
I agree.
As far as, the Rich Paul, I guess one thing I wanted to tag on at the end of that comment that you had about Rich Paul, does it concern you at all with Tyrese Maxey?
Not even in the slightest bit. If Rich
Paul that he would drop him,
one thing other than that he doesn't know what he's doing, it's that he doesn't care about Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey's small potatoes to him. Okay. Now, obviously, that was before Tyrese Maxey started having this most improved player campaign. Yeah. So he's made his way up the power rankings a little bit, as it were, but he's really not on Rich Paul's radar. So I'm not too worried about it. I think that he's going to continue to attach himself to the Clutch name because that's a wise thing for athletes to do. Because when you're with Clutch, you don't need, you don't need agents who work as hard. There are many hardworking agents with Clutch, but it's just being attached to that name is something in and of itself. So I think Maxi's going to stay with Clutch. I think that's fine as long as they don't ask him to cancel any more appearances. I think that's perfectly fine. Just stop using him as a bargain. Yep, that's all I ask.
Yeah, and that is, you know, the thing that kind of sparked my question, or my interest in that question, was, you know, the little rumors that came out over the offseason, which Tyrese Maxey ended up, I think he tried to say that they weren't true, or there wasn't, you know, it wasn't completely true or something.
It's funny because what happened is that the rumors were fed to Jason Dumas, who has a connection to Rich Paul. And, you know, well, I mean, what that connection is, I mean, a professional connection. Okay. Jason does very good work, and Jason does his job, and he does his job very well. And so he received information, obviously, from Rich Paul. And so Jason put it out there because Rich Paul wanted it out there. That's how all this stuff works.
Yep.
And once the feedback, you know, the you know, crap storm, as it were, you know, happened thereafter, and everyone's freaking out at Rich Paul and Clutch Sports because of it all, well, that's when you have to save face with PR. And the best way to do that is to go back to that same source, that mouthpiece. I don't want to. Kendrick Perkins is a mouthpiece. Jason Dumas is a lot more than that. I don't want to insult Jason Dumas. But that conduit almost, and say, well, you got, I know I told you it, but you got to recant it. We got it because we got to get that done. And so Dumas, you know, himself said that that Clutch and everything said that it wasn't a, you know, that it was a whatever the case. So that it just simply wasn't the case.
Isn't that amazing?
And it's I'll tell you, this stuff, man, it's mind numbing sometimes. It really is. It's just like tangling your own the worst way. It really is.
It's odd. So just as far as, you know, to kind of wrap up on Ben Simmons and moving into the next section, I mentioned the trades, the mock trades.
Yeah.
What would you, if you're Daryl Morey? Obviously, Daryl Morey is his own
nobody like him
thing. If you were the GM of the Sixers, what would you be looking for in return for Ben Simmons? And who would be your ideal candidate of, you know, as far as teams you're reaching out to?
Yeah.
And the reason I asked this as we head into the Sacramento Kings segment is because I mentioned to you before we came on the air here, looking at the Sacramento Kings roster, they have some very desirable trade packages that I could see for Ben Simmons. That's why they're always brought up. But as Tyrese Maxey emergence has happened, the want for certain holes to be filled has kind of gravitated to different holes. So what are you looking for necessarily? Are you looking for like best player available? Or are you looking for the right pieces for the fit around Embiid and Tobias and company? What are you looking for, and what would you accept?
I would say, in the larger sense, I'm looking centers aside for the best player available. I think that's the most important thing, and obviously you need them to make sense. And we're talking about legitimate best player available. You know, I don't like that. Well, they have to be an all-star, because personally, I'm not a fan of Pascal Siakam is better than some of the players who have been offered for Ben Simmons. However, his need to have the ball, especially in the mid-range and the post, just with Embiid in general, is not good. Let alone if you add Tobias Harris in there, it's a nightmare. So for me, it's guys like I'm head over heels in love with the idea of Jaylen Brown.
Yeah,
is it gonna happen? Probably not, but I'm madly in love with that idea. I've been a huge fan of Brown since he was at Cal, just because those types of players don't grow on trees. And what I mean by that is that 6'6" to 6'8", great athlete, two-way player, they just don't happen every day. I mean, Jaylen Brown, in my mind, Jaylen Brown is what we thought Andrew Wiggins was going to be.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a great comparison and point.
To have him on this team would be absolutely amazing. If we're talking about in every single area who's better, Jaylen Brown or Ben Simmons, I think it's probably close, honestly. The value of Jaylen Brown is much higher right now.
Yeah.
That's just it. So if you're moving Simmons, you're giving up more than just that. Personally, I would love to see Simmons in Boston, just because it's gonna make that rivalry even better.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're right.
However, I just recently posted this trade the other day, kind of in response to a trade that was on Bleacher Report. The initial trade, the basics of it, I won't get into the nitty gritty, was moving Ben Simmons to Minnesota and Karl-Anthony Towns to Boston, Jaylen Brown to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And there were many more moving pieces in that, such as Robert Williams from Boston, which he's a rookie who just signed an extension, so he's a part of the poison pill provision, meaning that he has a different salary implication where he's going as opposed to what needs to come back to that team. If that sounds complicated, it is. And that's why it's difficult to move poison pill players, unless you're trading Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from Oklahoma City. But that's a story for a whole nother day. So in any case, I love that idea, that concept of Jaylen Brown to Philly, Ben Simmons to Minnesota, Karl-Anthony Towns to Boston, for a few different reasons. Now, Karl-Anthony Towns, I think he also needs to leave Minnesota.
Yeah.
Just for his sake, I think Minnesota needs to cut the cord, try one more time and start over with somebody new.
Yeah.
And I think Boston's a great location for him, because I think he's one of the few players who would play well with Jason Tatum. And I don't mean to knock Jason Tatum. It's just that you need certain types of players to play with Tatum, and Jaylen Brown is too similar. They're not the same, obviously, but he's too similar to Tatum to truly be great. You know, a Kyle Lowry, for instance, would be really good with Jason Tatum. Obviously, Karl-Anthony Towns, I think, as well. Ben Simmons in Minnesota, that makes sense for obvious reasons. Everyone's heard about Ben to Minnesota, so I'm not really going to talk too much about that. And then, of course, Jaylen Brown, just a wonderful fit. I think that if you move the original trade through Bleacher Report suggested Matisse Thybulle, I don't think you have to do that. Danny Green and picks, and I think he can make up the difference.
Yeah.
But for me, that's where I'm going. I am still star hunting. Okay. Bradley Beal's not going to happen. They're the number one team in the East. It's not going to happen. Damian Lillard is an interesting case. I don't think that's going to happen either, though, because ironically of what's going on in Portland right now.
Yeah.
For those who are unaware, the Portland Trailblazers are a hot dumpster fire, like just absolute mess. They are, what are they, 4-6 in their last 10? They're 6-8 total. The biggest thing, though, of course, is the pending firing of Neil Oshie, their general manager, which a lot of Sixers fans I've heard think that's it. That's the floodgate to getting Damian Lillard, because the new GM probably going to be okay with rebuilding. I don't think that's the case. I think that Damian Lillard was very aware of the implications against Neil Oshie before they were put out there, and not suggesting that he had anything to do with them getting out there.
Yeah.
But I think that Dame Lillard is looking for this as an opportunity that he can truly mold the Blazers in his image even more. So I think that this was the worst thing to happen when it comes to getting Damian Lillard or even CJ McCollum, for that case. But
TJ,
those are the levels of player I'm looking at. I can't get him out of my mind since that Pacers game, because he was classic TJ, man. You know, he yet again showing that he's the perfect backup regular season point guard. And I know that he's not going to be great during the playoffs, but I still want him all the same.
No, it was such a TJ game, and I mean, for him to be the guy that ices us too, it's wild. But I wanted to ask you just a few kind of coattail questions about Jaylen Brown, and then even Dame Lillard. So when we're talking about Jaylen Brown, I know you said the original included Matisse Thybulle. Would you go as far as to include Matisse Thybulle if it was required for Jaylen Brown?
Possibly. You could probably convince me at some point what I'm going to need in return. I think I'd want this regardless, but what I'm going to need in return in that case is Dennis Schroeder, who'd become available after December 15th. And I don't love Schroeder's game. It's just this team needs a veteran backup point guard.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And when looking at players available, if you're not going to get one in the Ben Simmons trade, which you may not want one now with how well Maxi's playing,
yeah,
a player like Schroeder in a Ben Simmons deal or a secondary deal if you want to just move Danny Green, because they could do that too. They could make a separate deal and move Danny Green for a player like Schroeder or something such as that. But yeah. I would feel much more comfortable with a veteran backup point guard. So
I agree. Yeah.
But you could convince me to give – you can't convince me to give up Maxey and Simmons for Jaylen Brown, but you can convince me to give up Thibault and Simmons for Jaylen Brown, but I want a little bit more back.
Yeah. And then just a coattail question for the Dame Lillard situation. And I think this is something that's kind of arose over the last few weeks as well under, Maxey's emergence lately. Are we willing – and maybe it doesn't include Maxey, but are we willing to sell the farm for Damian Lillard still at this point? Would you be able to is what I'm really asking.
I'm out on Dame if it costs me Simmons, Thibault, and Maxey. My available players include Ben Simmons, Isaiah Joe, Matisse Thybulle even, but Tyrese Maxey. And then obviously it goes on. Yeah, Springer, Reed, sure, that's fine. That's totally okay. But Tyrese Maxey, it's not that he's untouchable. It's just that from a value perspective, losing him and Simmons does not equate gaining Damian Lillard. I mean, between Lillard and Embiid, we would have $100 million once Embiid's Supermax kicks in. I mean, that's a lot of money going to two currently hurt, aging players, and that's just not something that I'm overly comfortable with. I think that you can get a worse player than Damian Lillard, add him to Maxey, and that is better than adding Damian Lillard to Joel Embiid. I actually put out a poll not too long ago where I was asking a very similar question. If you could trade Simmons and Maxey for Damian Lillard, or just Simmons and get CJ McCollum. McCollum. And again, there's more involved in that deal, whatever ancillary pieces, secondary pieces that you want there to be, that's fine. Personally, I would pick CJ, and
I'm pretty sure I voted for CJ.
And it was 73-27 in favor of in CJ percent, with 500 or something votes, I think it was. But give me a very good player with Tyrese Maxey over a possibly declining superstar without Maxey.
Yeah, no, I thought that was perfectly put. And honestly, that's where I'm at. I'm not willing to necessarily what we would call sell the farm. Yeah. If that farm includes Maxey, I think Thybulle would be kind of my tweener, right? It would take a maximum talent for me to do it. Jaylen Brown, it's such a perfect fit. If they're absolutely pulling my teeth, to take Thybulle with Simmons, I would do it. The main thing with Thybulle and Simmons, I don't know why you would want them both. You know what I mean? As far as what their deficiencies are, they're very
especially Boston, who just they're already lacking in shooters, and they're going to add Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle. That's what really doesn't make sense to me. And it's one of the reasons you're losing one of your best shooters in Jaylen Brown too. So that's why for me, if you go with the three-way with Towns going to Boston, it makes more sense.
Makes way more sense. Yeah, I totally agree. So let's keep it moving. We spent a lot of time on the Sixers and Simmons. Let's talk about some Sacramento Kings here.
Oh, sure. A lot going on. A lot going on in Sacktown.
Yeah, a lot going on. And I'm going to kind of let you digress into that. But as far as I know, they were on a 4-game losing streak coming into today. I know they had a matchup with the Pistons tonight, which I don't know if that started at 7 right now. Okay, and I'm not sure how they're doing in that matchup.
Pretty well, actually.
Are they? Yeah, the Pistons. It's the Pistons.
It's the Pistons. So let's not get carried away here. But they're not losing like they did to the Thunder. So there
we go. That's a start. So the first thing I want to ask you, obviously I hear all the rumors about Luke Walton. I've heard him for over a year at the very least. Seems like everybody wants Luke Walton, even people outside of the Sacramento fan base.
I think Luke Walton wants to get fired, if I'm being honest with
you. So digress a little bit into that. Why has it come to this point with Luke Walton now? And then, what is the big case with Luke Walton and everybody wanting him out of Sacramento, including himself?
Well, I'll start with this. Luke Walton is the worst coach in the NBA. He does not make adjustments. He does not understand schemes. He does not understand roster construction. I do think that he is the worst coach, and that's my opinion. I think everything that we hate about Doc Rivers, that's Luke Walton without the redeeming qualities. It's utterly frustrating. He has in my opinion, unsatisfactory past, which the biggest reason for him being fired is on the court, but what I'm referring to is off the court. So that for me is another reason to want him out of Sacramento as well.
Like a culture thing.
It's a culture thing. I don't think he does anything. I don't think obviously he negatively impacts the Kings, but I don't know what he does well. Obviously the offense has performed well. I think that's the players. I don't think that's Walton putting them, because they still don't seem fluid. There's a lot of what's done is because you have one of the best fast break players in the league in De'Aaron Fox. You have one of the best shooters in the league in Buddy Hield. Harrison Barnes is a Swiss Army knife. And you have a great offensive rebounder in Rashawn Holmes. Yeah. Now, and I'm not leaving out Tyrese Halliburton. He's a very good player. It's just that I feel like Tyrese Halliburton is more of a jack of all trades, whereas those are the specialties of those other players.
Cards.
And Barnes is a legitimate Swiss Army knife, so that's why he gets billing there. But I think it's the players that have caused the offensive success. I mean, the Kings over the past 3 years, we'll go 4 because we'll include this year. 5th ranked offense right now in the league, 11th last year. Now, the year before that, they were all the way down at 22, but a lot of that was due to De'Aaron Fox missed time. Harrison Barnes just had a down year overall. But the year before that, they were 9th. So in their bones, they have good offensive talent, okay? Every single year, they're one of the worst defenses. Every single year. And that is a huge, huge red X on Luke Walton for not finding any way to improve whatsoever. Different players have come in. Harrison Barnes is a solid defender. De'Aaron Fox has a reputation of being a pretty good defender. Rashawn Holmes is a good shot blocking center. Even adding people like Mo Harkless, who has looked utterly useless this year. But he's a solid defender. He's an okay wing role player. I don't want him starting games for me, but he should improve the defense. But we're still looking at the same terrible defense as every year, and that's something that just it frustrates me to no end. And if I'm Sacramento, I'm looking very carefully at the Sixers' Dan Burke, whether it be for a head coaching position or just first coach off the bench, because you need to fix this defense in the offseason. Now, Luke Walton, for a while, his job was safe. It was the old Kings regime. The biggest thing from what I heard was the contract, just how much money was left. They didn't want to fire him, still have to pay him and pay somebody else who, let's be honest, with the Kings' track record, they were probably going to end up firing as well when they played dissatisfactory. So for a while, that was an excuse that was able to fly by. We're at the point, and under this new regime, where that's not going to cut it anymore. The expectation, Monty McNair was very clear. Earlier in the month, he was very clear. The expectation is playoffs, not even playing it, playoffs. Okay, so for Sacramento, that's the goal. Anything less?
Do they have the talent?
What's that?
Do they have the talent to be a playoff team in the West?
In the Western Conference this year? No, the Western. See, for so many years, the West and the East, it seemed unbalanced, and the Western Conference was so much better. This year, it's the opposite. The West is so unsure. There's like four or five teams at the top, sure, but the Lakers are a huge question mark. The Clippers, how long can they keep it up without Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah.
Even the Mavericks, I don't fully trust, especially with Jason Kidd, heading them up. But when you look, the Kings, last I checked, they were ninth, so a solid spot for the play-in, and every team below them seems to have zero shot of making the playoffs legitimately. It's the Timberwolves, the Spurs, the Thunder, the Rockets, all those teams, the Pelicans, who have been awful this year. Just this is the year for the Kings to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen losing 4 in a row.
Yeah.
So a change has to happen, whether that's on the court, whether that's with the roster, or preferably, in my opinion, with the head coach.
Yeah, you gotta kind of change the tide there, change the direction, and I think Luke Walton would be the perfect place to start. You mentioned roster construction as well, and that's something I wanted to ask you about. Like, do you think there's an influx of quality guards? As far as what they brought in, or do you think it kind of balances out well with having that many just quality guards? Because when I think of guards. And maybe Buddy Hield doesn't fit into that guard. Maybe he's more of a wing guy, because he is a straight shooter. You have Davion Mitchell. You have De'Aaron Fox, who you've mentioned, Tyrese Halliburton. So when I'm thinking about this guard rotation, it kind of creates like this turnstile of guards in and out. And, I obviously, as I mentioned, I don't watch a ton of the Sacramento Kings. They are a West Coast team who usually play late. Yeah, exactly. But just thoughts on the roster construction in general. What are they missing, I guess, is a good place to start in your eyes?
They're missing an identity, and that's very clear. It really seemed like De'Aaron Fox was going to be the superstar of the team. And he's still young. He is very talented. He could very well become that player, but he's not that player yet. So they're still lacking that player. So for me, it's about making a decision. Do we make I think tanking's out the window. Purposely tanking is not something that this new regime is going to be interested in. And as much as I would normally advocate for it, I think that's the right move, is to try and push for the playoffs instead. Because what you need to do is reignite interest in this team, and a playoff appearance would absolutely do that. So for me, it's about adding depth first and foremost, but really finding an identity. And I think that it's going to be challenging to add that one single player to build around this year and go about it that way. So whether it's you're going to be one of the top, fast break teams, whether it's you're going to be an athletic two-way force, or you're going to find a way to become one of the top shooting teams, whatever the case may be, you need to find a real identity, and that can get you into the playoffs. And again, this Western Conference, I'm not overly confident in any of the teams. Anything can happen at that point. So the point is, though, that you need more talent flat out.
Yeah.
And there's some questionable fits. Allegedly, questions are even being had inside the Kings front office, according to Sam and Mick of The Athletic, about the Fox-Halliburton combination, because it's been a pretty bad trend this year where together Fox looks nothing like himself, and then the minute that Halliburton's out with, say, a stiff back, Fox rather is going crazy in games, but the Kings are still losing, which is the most important thing at the end of the day. And then Halliburton comes back and De'Aaron Fox starts struggling again. So it's fair to question their combination. And I think De'Aaron Fox is going to be the most important player for the Sacramento Kings this season. And it's not even 100% about what he does on the court. It's either going to be what he does on the court, or it's going to be what they get for him if they do decide to move him. But that's going to be the player over anybody not named Marvin Bagley or Buddy Hield that they're going to be talking about in trade offers going forward.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great point. One question, I'm a Duke guy. What happened to Marvin Bagley, man? I've seen the reports from his dad, or not even reports, what his dad has said online. What happened there, man?
Bagley reminds me a lot of Ben Simmons in a lot of ways.
Interesting.
Thinking of his family, supportive parents, I should say, are so important. Just flat out so important. You don't want to make your kids think of themselves as gods on the basketball court. And I think that's kind of where Ben Simmons' father went a little too far and Marvin Bagley's father went a little too far. And they didn't see, because they were told not to see, the holes in their games.
Yeah.
And so Bagley, he was a tweener 4-5. He was too small to really play the 5. He was not refined enough to play the 4. Really what somebody should have done was, put him in a gym, say, bulk up, and you're going to be our 5. That's what should have been done with Marvin Bagley. He did not have the right support system around him, whether it be outside of the Kings organization or within.
Yeah.
Under this new Kings regime, it's simply too little too late. That's it. I think that if this, which not that they would have drafted Luka or at least Trey Young.
Yeah.
But if this Kings organization had drafted Marvin Bagley, I think we're talking about a player near DeAndre Ayton level. So it really just shows what the wrong situation can do to a player. Not abstaining the player of guilt, because clearly a lot of that does rely on Bagley, but in another situation, I think he could have been and could still be a solid NBA player.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that, it was so alarming, to see what he's turned into. What year is he even in? Year 3 or?
Is it year 4?
Year 3 or 4, I would imagine.
I think it's got to be. It's at least 3. Yeah,
it's at least 3. So
I think it's 3. Yeah, whatever.
For him to be
younger, yeah.
Yeah, for him to be, just what he's turned into and what I thought that he could be. And maybe obviously there's some Duke bias there for sure.
Well, it's been a while since we had a good Duke big man in the league. Hopefully, Paolo Banchero can change some things.
He's nice.
He's my number 1 pick in this draft this year. But
already, or you said he's not?
He's my number 1.
Oh, he's your number 1.
He's my number 1. I'm not a huge Chet Holmgren guy.
Gotcha.
So for me, it's Paolo, and I'm excited for his future because he seems to have things put together in a way that Marvin Bagley and Jahlil Okafor just did not.
I agree. The thing I saw, it was that opening game against Kentucky, and the turnaround fadeaway jumper, always being double teamed. You know what I mean? Yeah. And just to see that in college, and I know he's playing the center position. He's a lot different player than Jason Tatum, but just that NBA readiness, you kind of see it. You see it right off the bat, because Tatum, the same thing. Him at Duke, I just knew the way he played, the mid-range game, the go-to spots on the floor that he loves. It's NBA basketball, and he's playing.
It's not Jahlil Okafor playing 80s ball out there, It's completely different.
It's so different, and you can see it, and sometimes it doesn't translate to the college basketball game because it's so, the NBA is so one-on-one, get to your spot, get your shot. So you can kind of see it from afar, but yeah, it's interesting, man, to see how these players get into the league, and if they're not in the right situations, it just doesn't work out. Some players are so.
You can make a case that's what happened with Markelle Fultz. I mean, obviously, listen, I'm not absolving Markelle from any wrongdoing. I think that there was a lot of wrongdoing on his end with everything that happened, and whether those things were his idea or those representing him, whatever the case may be. Because remember, these are young guys coming to the NBA, young, impressionable guys. Yeah. Okay. Philadelphia was not the right location for him. Not through any fault of the fan base. I mean, Philadelphia, the organization, was not the right place for Markelle Fultz. So it's sad when you see stuff like that happen. But
it is, man.
I have hope for Bagley that he can get his head right, because he is doing several highly questionable things. such as not checking into the game. Like, listen, I don't have much respect for Luke Walton either, but when your head coach tells you to check into a game, you check into the game. Okay.
Yeah.
But
so is he just riding the bench right now, or is he like not showing up?
He's getting a little bit of game action, but the Kings made it clear at the beginning of the year. What's that?
He's still with the team. So
it's not a Simmons situation, at least not yet. But the Kings made it clear that he was not going to be a part of the rotation before the season even started. So I would love to see Bagley go to – I mean, Detroit was rumored to be interested in him again. They've been looking at him since before Bagley was upset with the Kings. So Detroit makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Oklahoma
City, if Houston decides that Christian Wood's not on their time frame, which he's not, that's another maybe less so interesting because they did draft some nice young big talent this year. But just anywhere he gets an opportunity, I have hope for him. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. One last thing on the Kings, your realistic expectations for them this season. Where do they end up?
If they fire Luke Walton, which it really looks like they are, they're a playoff team. They are, and that is with or without De'Aaron Fox. They're a playoff team. Now, I think there's a few players that they could look to add. Even if you keep Fox, Jeremy Grant is so. I recently wrote about Marvin Bagley potential trade packages, and if you're willing to give up first-round picks in addition to it, there's a way to get Jeremy Grant from the Pistons. I think he'd be not a perfect but a solid fit. Or if you are looking to move De'Aaron Fox, obviously the Kings and all their fans would love Jaylen Brown. Boston needs a point guard. I don't think that's the cleanest fit in Boston. I think much more likely you're going to be looking at a guy maybe like Brandon Ingram out of New Orleans, and that's okay. I think a guy like Brandon Ingram would not be a bad asset at all for Sacramento. So whether it's one of those players who are leading the way or if it's De'Aaron Fox, I think that this is going to be the year that the Kings make it back to the playoffs.
Interesting. I love to hear that. You know, I grew up years ago. My mom was like a huge Chris Webber fan. And I grew up on like those
Mike until he came to Philadelphia.
Huh?
I said, so was I until he came to Philadelphia.
Right, where it went downhill, bro. Yeah. But my mom had me growing up on those Kings teams with like Mike Bibby, Doug Christie, Peja, you know, the classic Kings teams. Yeah. So all I really know from my childhood is good Kings teams. And, you know, growing up as an adult, they've just been kind of horrid. But I would like to see them get back in the mix there, honestly. They got some great young talent, some guys that, you know, could potentially bud if they can get to that level, you know, of the playoffs and get that type of recognition. So I will,
listen, you know, I can talk about playoff games for a California team that's not the Lakers. I'm happy about it, you know?
Yeah. No, I think I'm gonna check out the Kings the rest of this season, kind of keep my eyes on them after talking to you tonight, honestly. Now that we've gotten past the Kings, we've gotten past the Sixers, we'll get into just a little bit of general NBA talk because I've ran over my time. I told you I talk a lot. I ask a lot of questions. I love to pick great basketball minds, so it's a strength and a weakness for me. But I want to, you know, get your opinion of maybe just two or three teams that have impressed you or surprised you the most this season from their performances.
Yeah, I mean, for me, in no particular order, I'll say the Denver Nuggets for me are shocking. Missing Jamal Murray. Listen, I get it. They have Jokic, right? He's the reigning MVP. Yeah. You're missing Jamal Murray, okay, who is, you know, he's not chopped liver. Like, he's a good NBA player who fits really well with Jokic. And, and the whole team struggled without him at the end of last season. Yeah. Okay. Michael Porter Jr. has been struggling with injuries a little bit as of late.
Yeah, got the back injury.
Yeah, unfortunately.
He's a stud.
The team is still looking good. I mean, they're looking strong, and you know, some of their opponents have been a little bit higher quality than some of the other top teams in the West, like the Golden State Warriors, for instance, who are very good, but have been beating up on some lesser quality opponents. So for me, the Denver Nuggets are huge. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I mean, who would have thought that Markkanen, Mobley, and Allen would have made a good lineup. I mean, just absolute. And listen, that's like 70% Mobley right there.
Yeah.
He's an impressive rookie.
I was going to ask you about him.
Oh my goodness, I love that guy. He's
a rookie of the year.
Insane. He's my rookie of the year, far and away right now. I don't see. Jalen Green would have to have an Anthony Edwards second half, which he could. It's possible. Cade Cunningham has been fine, but Cade's not flashy. Like, that's never been Cade. So I don't see him making a run at Mobley here. Scotty Barnes is, I mean, he's crazy good. Let's be honest. If we're talking about a number 2, for me, it's Scotty Barnes, but Evan Mobley is my number 1 far and away. He's been the biggest difference maker for a Cleveland Cavaliers team that is 8-5. And it looks, not 100% real, but it looks like a playoff team. Yeah, and that's crazy to think about.
And Sexton,
and then obviously third, right? The Sixers too. Sexton's been fine. Sexton's down to like 16 points per game. That's kind of.
I thought he got injured though.
I don't remember him playing a whole lot because I've been focused on Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. So
right, Darius Garland.
Nice. They haven't missed much of a beat. I'll say.
That's what I was gonna say.
That's the thing, is that it kind of goes to show that Colin Sexton is not. I mean, people were talking about him as a centerpiece for Ben Simmons, and for me, it was, well, I'll take Colin Sexton, and I'll take whatever contract, Kevin Love to match salary or whatever. But you're giving me like 3 first-round picks at least.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna be in love with the idea of Colin Sexton, because you're talking about a player. Colin Sexton's Jordan Clarkson. That's it. That's a fine player. That's a fine player. But he's a Jordan Clarkson who's going to demand $25 million next year. I don't want to pay that. So I love the guy. I love his mentality. He's not the savior of Cleveland this time around. That looks like Evan Mobley.
Yeah, no. Evan Mobley, I mean, he's been very impressive. I mean, you talk about doing it all.
Yeah.
I mean, on the defensive end, it facilitated.
I was not sure about him playing power forward at the NBA level. And he proved me so wrong. I mean, just the way that he can handle the rock and just do everything is just
so fluid.
I mean, the Chris Bosh comparisons are real. It's real.
No, the Cavs are one of the teams I had on here. I also had the Wizards. Surprised by their hot start to begin with.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm really wondering. How real is this?
Right.
But it's so impressive what they've been able to do.
It is. And it feels like, the additions of Kuzma, Montrez, even KCP as a starter, Dinwiddie, obviously, but they were, looking like a decent fit so far. Obviously, we are 8 and 6, so 14, 15 games into the season. So I mean, it's not saying a ton.
Not far at all, but they're looking great so far.
Yeah, and then the only other team I had there, so I had the Wizards, I had the Cavs, and then I also had the Clippers. Just without Kawhi, I thought that's been pretty impressive. Paul George is, they've been talking about him in the MVP conversation. Don't know how long that can last, but he is putting up some great numbers.
Yeah, no, I think the Clippers have been playing very well this year. Paul George playing out of his mind, obviously.
Yeah.
Again, for me, it's how strong are your opponents? And that's kind of my question. I have that question about just about every single Western Conference team.
Yeah.
So that is my only concern going forward with the Clippers, is just how good are you really? Which they'll have the chance to prove. But for them to start with, especially because they had a slower start to the season, but they're looking pretty good now.
They reeled off like 7 in a row and dropped one last thing.
It's exciting. I mean, it really is. The other team, the last team that I had in my mind was honestly the Sixers. Just watching how they've been without Ben Simmons first. Watching how Drummond's been, Yang's been, Korkmaz, the rise of Matisse defensively into officially one of the top wing defenders in the entire NBA. And Maxi's case for most improved. Just Absolutely fantastic. And then to watch how they were without Embiid. I know they're coming off a 4-game slide.
Yeah.
But the Sixers have shown themselves to be one of the powerhouses in the NBA in spite of not having Ben Simmons suit up for them.
They have major building blocks that they're building right
Absolutely.
now. Major development going on in Philly. And I think this
is the year.
People can joke around, about all this COVID, how it's affecting them, the 4-game losing streak. But when you see Joel Embiid step back on the court with these guys, it's going to be a whole different ballgame when you have guys with superior confidence like the Korkmazes, the Niangs of the world that are going to step out there. They're going to let it fly. And that's a good thing when you have Joel Embiid there. So, I'm very excited for the Sixers. Last thing I wanted to get out of you tonight, Zach, and I promise you this is it. Top 5 teams as of right now in the NBA. And this is top 5 teams power rankings. So the teams you think when this team steps on the floor, they have the best chance to win.
Yeah. So the way I kind of took it was I kind of made mine just with how everyone this year is struggling with COVID protocols at the moment.
Yeah.
The Chicago Bulls recently struggling with it as well. I kind of went with sensibly healthy. So, not giving, say, a team who's missing a player for the year the benefit of the doubt because of that injury, but more so rationalizing it, saying, well, this person's going to return from COVID protocol. So how good is this team when they're sensibly healthy? So for me, number 5, the Denver Nuggets have, again, been insane. And that's not even thinking about Jamal Murray, because I'm not even thinking about him touching the court this year.
Yeah.
He shouldn't. He should not touch the court this year. Even still, they've been fantastic. Number 4 for me has been the Golden State Warriors. Can't wait to see what Klay Thompson does. Forget about him even though they've been doing great. Again,
even without Klay, without Wiseman.
Yeah. Oh, they've been better without Wiseman. I mean, Wiseman is oh my gosh. They better hope he doesn't come back. I mean, it's been the worst. I mean, we're talking about like
just an ugly fit.
Oh my goodness. Just awful.
And it's like you gotta play him. You drafted him. You know what I mean? You gotta give him
the number 2 pick. But I mean, like, I'm not even a Warriors fan, but never has a number 2 pick caused me so much pain since Evan Turner. I mean, it's absolutely insane. But number 3 for me is the Miami Heat. Listen, I get it. Kyle Lowry's not playing great. Okay. This is a solid, well-rounded team. Okay.
Yeah.
Tyler Hero, I'm not a huge fan of, but he's been balling this year. Jimmy Butler doing his thing. Bam Adebayo, likewise, This is a solid, most importantly, playoff-built team.
Yeah.
So easily number 3 for me. Number 2, Philadelphia 76ers. Listen, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, legs under them, Matisse Thybulle too. This is one of the top 2 teams in the league. I don't think there should be a question about that based on how they've handled situations when healthy. Again, top team in the entire league in plus minus per 100 possessions, okay? Or top lineup. Their starting lineup is the top lineup in the entire league, I should say.
Yeah.
So when those guys are healthy again, you're talking about an absolutely insane team, the regular season and the playoffs. Got to figure out the backup 5 position in the playoffs because I don't think Drummond's going to be able to do that. He's better than Howard, but I still think it's not going to be great. He got just.
What do you think the ideal fit for a backup center would be in the playoffs?
Man,
first player that comes to mind.
I mean, the first player to come to my mind is Chris Boucher for the Toronto Raptors.
Oh man, he is perfect. That is the perfect fit.
That's it. It's been him forever. Like that's who I wanted so bad for.
He is perfect.
Just get me someone who can stretch the floor a little bit athletic. A Dwayne Dedman. I've been in love with Dwayne Dedman for years. I mean, a player like that too. But that's the construct is, get me a guy who can rebound, who can block shots, who can shoot a little bit. You don't need to shoot a lot, just shoot a little bit, stretch the floor a tiny bit. And I think you're going to be fine. I mean, Niang's going to be a little problematic in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If the other team goes small, you might be able to play him at the 5 a little bit. Depending who your matchup is, it's just going to be a nightmare. I mean, if Durant's playing the 4 and you got George Niang out there at the 4, that's not great. So I'm looking forward to a lot of. I need Niang and Thybulle on the court at the same time. Okay. But I also need another player who's not on the roster to be my backup 5 because Paul Reed is not ready. I think he'll be great at that eventually. He's not ready. and Andre Drummond just doesn't have it in him. So,
yeah.
But speaking of Kevin Durant, that brings me to my number one team. It's the Brooklyn Nets. Like people have been so silent on the Brooklyn Nets for a lot of reasons. They don't want to talk about Kyrie. I get it. You know, they are questioning how well Harden's playing because it doesn't look like Harden. Some of the teams they've played aren't great, so you want to question that too. This team, first of all, no team looks great. Let's be honest.
Right? Yeah, I think that's the best way to
No team looks great. And so for me, it's about, well, who do I trust at the end of the day? That's Kevin Durant. That's James Harden. So far, they're proving it in the regular season. We know they can do it in the postseason. Number one team until the Sixers, hopefully, dethrone them. But for now, they're number one.
No, man, I think that's a flawless list. I'll go ahead and tell you mine. I'll break mine off really quick here just to kind of use as a point of reference. But I do have the Miami Heat as my number 5 team. I'm right with you. I think it's the addition of Kyle Lowry, obviously, but just their defensive presence. I think that's going to get them really far. And Bam Adebayo still has some ceiling to tap into as well. I think that's something that people don't take into account either. And then, of course, Jimmy Butler, playing at the MVP level. I do have the Denver Nuggets here sitting at 9-4 right now. I have them at the 4 spot. And, for similar reason to, as you mentioned, just the depth that they're showing right now with what they're playing with. Michael Porter Jr., when he's out there, he wasn't healthy. He's missed a few games as well. And they don't even have a timetable for him. So they're going to have to figure it out, and they're going to have to continue figuring it out throughout this season. Because as you mentioned, Jamal Murray, you don't need to risk his future, just for a regular season, right? Like, it's not worth it. Coming in at number 3, I do have the Golden State Warriors, although I am a little shy. I'm a little gun shy with them, man. I feel like
it's tough to bet on Andrew Wiggins.
What'd you say?
It's tough to bet on Andrew Wiggins.
It's very hard to buy in on Andrew Wiggins playing like this consistently throughout an 82 game, let alone the playoffs, right? Before we even get there, but an 82 game season, and it's just simply not fair to calculate what you think Klay Thompson would be in there, because we don't know what Klay Thompson is after close to almost 3 seasons, it feels like. So number 3, I had the Warriors. Number 2, I'm right there with you, the Sixers. And it's so funny because, I feel like the Sixers get like this rap sheet, and it's like everybody else gets the benefit of the doubt to national media.
Yeah.
But if the Sixers lose without Embiid, that's just the Sixers. It's not the Sixers without Embiid. It's not the Sixers without Embiid and Tobias Harris. Or it's the Sixers without Ben Simmons because they know Ben Simmons won't be back, right? So it's always this narrative with the Sixers, but you already hit all the points with them. They're right up there at the top of the league. And we're talking about depth for teams going into the playoffs. They're building their depth right now. Paul Reed, he may not be ready. He's at least getting some experience right now. That's all we can ask for. And then number 1, Brooklyn. They're the juggernaut, I guess you could say, if there is one. But you mentioned it, man. These teams are losing to anybody and everybody on any given night, and you'll see the top team lose to the bottom team. We've seen it several times already this season, and just shows you the variance in the NBA. And it's in the NFL too. It's funny that I was just talking about this on my other show, Turf Talk, but it just feels like any given night you could take that out.
Oh yeah, listen, any given Sunday, absolutely. Yeah, it's a different NBA, folks. There's no Warriors, there's no Miami Heat. People
thought the Lakers, but obviously the fit.
Wow.
I mean,
man, that's
disgusting.
What an absolute horrible situation. Trading for Russell Westbrook at the time was stupid. Now it's moronic. I mean, it was so.
They had the Buddy Hield.
They had the Buddy Hield deal, which, I mean, like, listen, I'm not a big Kuzma fan. It would have made sense for the Kings. It would have made so much sense for the Lakers.
Yeah.
And whoever pulled the trigger on Westbrook over Hield, which I think was LeBron James, should be fired for making decisions for the franchise. Just absolutely egregious. Terrible.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Zach. But man, I mean, we've sat here an hour and 24 minutes. Definitely went over the time, but I do appreciate you sticking with me here, Zach. Before I get you out of here, please, if you could, just let my viewers know Anybody that's going to be watching this tomorrow, it'll get republished, repromoted. Where can my viewers find you, Zach?
Yeah. So first thing that I'd say is, absolutely check out phillysportsnetwork.com. I'm the managing editor there and a lot of Sixers focus, running the Sixers team there. So check out our Sixers content. We talk Birds, we talk Flyers, Phillies, Union, so on and so forth. Just an amazing place with a lot of great people, a lot of great opinions, great reporting. Definitely check out Philly Sports Network. You can check out royalpain.com as well. That is the site that I'm running for the Sacramento Kings. Okay. Kings fans, NBA fans, people just looking for more information about the league in general. Or if you're scouting Ben Simmons trade targets, check out royalpain.com. Okay. You can read my stuff there. I also write for Section 215, also through Fansided. So I'm writing a little bit about the Birds, occasional Flyers, Phillies here and there. Biggest thing, NFL mock drafts. That's mock trades, mock drafts. I'm all about the mocks. That's,
love it, man. I love it.
Me. And then just otherwise, shoot me a follow at Zach Ciavolella NBA, and going to be kind of going through a republishing of the Baseline Scoop, my podcast. So follow at Baseline Scoop as well.
Definitely check out all of Zach's work. I know I just followed a Royal Pain this evening, so I finally got on that little bandwagon there. But I'm definitely going to check it out. As you know, I'm a hoop head at the end of the day. I'm a Sixers fan, but I'm a hoop head, and I want to learn about the entire league. So I admire what you do. You cover multiple teams. You've been doing it for a while now, and I commend you, Zach. That's why I wanted to get you on the show. I knew you had the brain for it, so I'm happy I could have you here. Everybody, make sure you go follow Zach on Twitter at Zach Ciavo NBA. Covers the entire league. He'll keep you very entertained on Twitter, guys. Before we get out of here, I do have to mention my sponsor, or I should say DSM sponsor, DSM Media, that is, which you can find on Twitter at DSM_media. As you guys know, we are presented by Manscaped. DSM Media and Scotty Talks NBA are brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their fourth-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SCOTTY. That is SCOTTY at manscaped.com. Manscaped engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their fourth-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. This upgraded trimmer includes a multi-function on and off switch that can engage a travel lock. It also gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. And did I mention the wireless charging? The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SCOTTY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using the code SCOTTY. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. That is going to be it for this episode of Scotty Talks NBA. Once again, thank you very much, Zach, for joining the show tonight. Everybody, make sure to go give Zach a follow. Make sure you're keeping up with what he's doing. And enjoy this week full of plenty NBA basketball. We got plenty to go through, which I didn't even get. Man, and I'm not going to do it now. I didn't even get your expectations for the Jazz and the Sixers. But maybe I'll hit you up in the DMs for that. But
we'll have that conversation. Don't worry about
that. Thank you so much, brother. That's going to be it for this episode, guys. Peace.